we alone in the universe? Is there a government cover-up? Tune into my talk show, Universal Talk, Saturday, October 31st, 2009, Halloween, where we will explore the evidence. We welcome a world-renowned expert in the field of ufology, Richard Dolan. He is the author of UFOs and the National Security State, The Cover-Up Exposed, 1973 to 1991. The second volume of the classic trilogy was just released in August 2009. Richard Dolan has spoken about UFOs for audiences around the world. He has appeared on many documentaries for the History Channel, Sci-Fi Channel, BBC, and elsewhere. In 2006, he was host for the TV series Sci-Fi Investigates. Run out and get his book, as we will be taking callers at the end of my show. Listeners will have an opportunity to ask him questions for themselves.
Of the evidence shows crystal clear that the UFO phenomenon is real. That is, that there is an overwhelming number of cases in which objects have been seen by civilians and encountered by military personnel from around the world. We're not talking 5 or 10 or 100. We're talking many hundreds. Several hundred sightings are delineated in my book, dealing with the military alone. They're encountering something. The other two themes, one of these themes involves the politics or the cover-up, let's say. So that, the question is, well, is there a cover-up? And my argument in the book is, yes, there is a cover-up. And then we have to ask ourselves, well, what is the nature of this cover-up? What is the attitude that responsible agencies have toward UFOs? And who's in charge? Is it the president? Is it some other group? These are not always easy to answer, but my evidence that I've gotten tells me that the president is, in fact, not the main guy in charge, just as if the president is not the main person in charge of American policy in general. I think we all kind of get the idea that there are powerful groups behind the office of the presidency. Indeed, and I think this has also been applying to the UFO topic. And then the third theme, and, are you still there, Joe?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
I lost most of your voice, but I can still hear you. The third theme is, in some ways, was the most fascinating for me personally. And this was the history of the research, what we might call ufology. The history of ufology. It's quite a fascinating subject, and in my view, had not really gotten a proper history before. And I think, this book really is the beginnings of a proper history of ufology. Our consciousness in dealing with this phenomenon in the early 1970s was in a very, very different place from where it ended up by the end of the Cold War in 1991. There was really a major revolution in thought among researchers in how we thought about the UFO topic. And this, in a sense, is part of our own intellectual history. And I'm very glad that I got the chance to tell this story. In short, what we can say is that the UFO phenomenon pulled researchers through an array of beliefs and ideas as a way to make sense of it all. In the early 70s, people were not talking about things like abductions. They were not talking about very much animal mutilations. They were not talking about conspiracies in the way that we talk about conspiracies today. And how we got from the one point to the other is a story that is absolutely fascinating, is something that I was very glad to cover in my book. So, you still there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
What are the names of your books so far that you have out?
I can't hear you. I'm sorry. A little louder.
What are the names of the books that you have out right now, Rich?
Okay, great. Thank you. It's a trilogy. So it's two of the three books that are published. The trilogy is called UFOs and the National Security State. The first volume has two subtitles because I published one and then I got picked up by another publisher. So the first volume is subtitled An Unclassified History, and then that got changed to Cover-Up, Chronology of a Cover-Up. They're both available. You can go to my website, which is keyholepublishing.com, and you can read about them. And then the second volume is subtitled The Cover-Up Exposed. The third volume, which will be out in about 2 years, is subtitled The Fight for Disclosure, and that'll cover the years 1992 to the present day. I expect 2, possibly 3 years, and that book will be in print.
Great.
Yeah. There, I hear you.
Okay. I do have a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you ever have any personal experiences with a UFO?
Yeah, I think a little bit. I've had a sighting about a decade ago. I was in front of the house that I'm still living in here in Rochester, New York. I was with my son, who at the time was a small, young boy. He was about 3 years old back then. I was with him, and a bright spring day in May of 1999, I saw this very, very intensely bright object in the daytime sky. It reflected more intensely than any